Good morning and welcome to Peace Out, where we are all learning together to peace out. And I'm still learning a lot. And I still have lots of room for improvement, right? I know that's right. Okay, this week's book of the week is our James study guide. And that's why we're taking this. I combined that. I did it because I was reading James anyway, and I was like, this is really, let's just take a verse a day out of a chapter, each of the chapters. 5 chapters, we got 5 days. And so I decided to just spend this week reading and rereading and studying James myself. And so if you get a chance, grab the study guide from Does Fire Ministries publications.com or on Amazon. If you want the print or Kindle, it's on Amazon too. So grab a James study guide. You know what I also did? When I first published the book, we actually had a Bible study we did on Zoom. It went live on Facebook, but it also is on YouTube. So if you run over to YouTube, you can actually go through the book with us in a group study. We had a lot of conversations. So that's what I love about a group Bible study, is you get some different ideas and different questions and put it all together, right? So there's videos of the James study guide of us going through the whole book. There's the book itself on Kindle or print, and there's a book you can print it out yourself and print one lesson at a time if you want, do however you want. So it's self-paced, right? So grab a copy and enjoy the deep dive into this challenging book. I find James challenging because it's not that it's hard or difficult in a sense, but it asks the hard questions. In chapter 2, he talked about, when two people walk into your church, a rich person and a poor person, do you treat the rich person nicer? He's like, of course you do, right? And that's not cool. That's not cool with God, because they are both children of God, and we should not treat people different based on their appearance, based on their socioeconomic standing, based on whatever you want to fill in the blank there. We should just love people. And then in chapter 3, which is what I read it last night a while, and read it a couple more times this morning. I've just been reading it back and forth. I've jumped over to chapter 4, jumped back to chapter 1, or I jumped all around James this week. And in chapter 3, he talks about, the first part of chapter 3, which is where we are today, he talks about just guarding your mouth and how the tongue can be wicked. Boy, do we know that in this day and age, in this social media age. James chapter 3 rings so true, because it actually says the tongue is like, it's full of poison, and it can stir up strife, fast. And, we know that that's true with our tongues, but it's also true with what we type, the words we use on social media. You use one wrong word and you're going down, man. Right? You use one word somebody doesn't like, or you don't say something somebody thought you should have said even. Our words can get us in so much trouble. So James goes through these things from a biblical perspective, if that's the right way to say it, right? And from a godly perspective, and he asks the hard questions. And it challenges. I find James to be, I call it the spiritual obstacle course, because he challenges some really deep-rooted things in our heart and asks us, is this really of God? Are you putting it out there first? Are you putting God first? And so I call it God's obstacle course, right? And so I'm in the last couple of verses of chapter 3 this morning is where I wanted to take our devotion from. If I can read it here. I need my second pair of glasses. But in verse 17, he says this, the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. I love that. This is the New Living, by the way. Now, remember, he already talked about wisdom in chapter 1. And he said, if you want wisdom, you just ask from God. And God will give it. It says, if you ask earnestly and you truly believe God's going to give you wisdom, he's going to give you wisdom. Now, I want to throw in a plug here for Proverbs too, because we've talked about it several times. In Proverbs 2:6, it also says, wisdom comes from God. God gives wisdom. So God will give us wisdom. He will give us that wisdom. It's just like that heart smarts, right? And wisdom is just like what we need to function in a godly way, right? It says wisdom from above is first of all pure. God's wisdom is pure. It doesn't have ulterior motives. It doesn't have one person's, the outlook for one person any higher than somebody else. There's no contention in it. There's no manipulation in God's wisdom. There's nothing bad in God's wisdom. It's totally pure. right? There's not any ill motives or trying to put somebody else down. We can all have God's wisdom and just walk in his wisdom and walk in actually peace with one another and ourselves and between us and God, right? It says, first of all, it's pure. It's also peace loving and gentle at all times. It's willing to yield to others. Did you know that sometimes wisdom is just being silent? Don't always have to get the last word in. I need to hear that today. You don't need to hear that today. I had to say that for me, right? But sometimes using God's wisdom means we actually are silent. It actually means I don't have anything to contribute to this conversation that's going to make it more pure or settle it down, make it more peaceful. Because sometimes when we interject into some conversations, we find ourselves in a mess. But God, if we listen to God's wisdom, which is pure and doesn't come from selfish motivation, doesn't come from trying to be, from manipulation or anything. Sometimes it's wisdom to just be silent. And sometimes that makes people mad. Sometimes silence really makes people mad, right? Sometimes. But God's wisdom is going to be pure no matter what. It's going to be peace loving. It's always going to be put out there for peace. No matter what, we use his wisdom for making decisions. We use his wisdom for following his directions. We use his wisdom for walking out this life on this earth, right? And it's always going to be pure, not motivated from anything bad in any way, right? No manipulation or anything. It's also going to be peace loving. God's wisdom will always lead you into peace, right? And that can be in the middle of some really sticky situations. When we listen to God's peace, God's wisdom, we're just going to have his peace. Even when it looks like that decision made everything fall apart, we can still have his peace because we know that ultimately he's not going to lead us wrong. He's not going to lead us into something that he's not going to lead us right on out of, right? That's the cool part about God. If he leads us into it, he's going to lead us through it. He's going to lead us to the other side. And he never, I said this earlier this week, I think, unless that was last week, but he never led anybody into a battle without a plan for victory. He never said, now go into this battle and you're going to lose, but it's going to be good, right? No, he never led them into that. He took David right up to Goliath and just took Goliath out with David's hands. He took them to the Red Sea. He led them to the Red Sea. And he defeated Pharaoh's army, and they didn't even use a weapon, right? They didn't have they didn't even bring bows and arrows and swords and spears with them, and God wiped out the army. He took Joshua to Jericho, and God wiped out Jericho for him. He took Gideon and whittled his army down to 300 men, and they beat, it says, an innumerable army of Midianites. God never took anybody into battle and said, you're going to lose in the end, but it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. No, he always leads us, Philippians says, into victory. We always win when we listen to God's words. We always win when we give into his wisdom and tune into his wisdom rather than what we think our wisdom is, right? And it's always peace-loving. It's gentle at all times, always willing to yield to others. And listen to this. It is full of mercy and good deeds. God's wisdom is full of mercy and good deeds. It shows no partiality and is always sincere. That's some hefty stuff right there, right? Then it says, those who are peacemakers, there's a lot of peace in these 3 or 4 verses, will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of goodness. Are we peacemakers? Are we peacekeepers? If we're peacemakers, we will always be planting peace. That is really so much a part of God's wisdom. It's going to bring about peace. It doesn't always look peaceful at the beginning. Sometimes it looks really rocky in the middle, and you think you're never going to get to that peaceful end of a situation or a relationship or something. But ultimately, when we plant peace, we're going to reap goodness and we're going to reap peace because we followed his wisdom. Following God's wisdom will always bring a final result of peace with him and in our hearts and in no matter what situation we're dealing with, right? I'm going to listen to his wisdom today, and that's why I'm going to peace out. Peace out, you guys. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.